Why Leonor's military training is turning into a royal crisis. In the world of monarchy, tradition is everything. Every gesture, every word, every public appearance is carefully planned to protect the image of the crown. But sometimes, the very traditions meant to strengthen a royal institution can unexpectedly turn into its greatest challenge. Right now, that's exactly what seems to be happening with Princess Leonor, the future Queen of Spain. What was meant to be a powerful symbol of leadership and responsibility is quietly turning into a royal dilemma that no one inside the palace can easily solve. And it all begins with one decision: military training. For generations, Spanish monarchs have followed a tradition of serving in the armed forces. It's meant to show commitment to the nation and to prepare the future monarch to become commander-in-chief. Leonor's father, King Felipe VI, followed that exact path decades ago. So when the palace announced that Princess Leonor would undergo the same rigorous training across Spain's three military branches, the Army, Navy, and Air Force, the decision was celebrated as a modern yet respectful continuation of tradition. But what seemed like a proud moment for the monarchy has slowly started to reveal unexpected tensions. Because Leonor is not just another royal trainee. She is the future queen. And every step she takes now is shaping how the Spanish monarchy will look for decades to come. The first stage of Leonor's military journey began at the General Military Academy in Zaragoza. It was a powerful image: the young princess, wearing a military uniform, standing shoulder to shoulder with ordinary cadets. For the palace, the message was clear. Leonor would not receive special treatment. She would train like everyone else. Wake up before dawn, run drills, endure the same physical challenges, and face the same strict discipline. At first, the symbolism worked perfectly. Many Spaniards admired the idea that their future queen was willing to go through the same hardships as young officers. But as the months passed, a deeper question started emerging. Is it truly possible for a future monarch to be treated like everyone else? Or is that simply an illusion? Inside military institutions, hierarchy matters. Orders must be followed. Authority must be respected. Yet Leonor's presence complicates everything. Because technically, she is already above everyone. She is the heir to the throne. One day, she will become the head of state and the symbolic leader of the armed forces. That means every instructor, every officer, and every cadet around her knows they are training someone who will someday outrank them all. And that creates a strange dynamic. Imagine being an instructor tasked with disciplining the future queen. Can you push her as hard as the others? Can you punish her if she fails? Can you treat her exactly like any other cadet? Or does her royal status inevitably change the way people behave around her? Even the most disciplined institutions struggle with that kind of pressure. And the public has begun noticing it too. Some critics argue that Leonor's training is more symbolic than real. They question whether the princess is truly experiencing the same level of hardship as other cadets. Others worry about the opposite problem. What if the military feels forced to treat her more harshly than everyone else just to prove that she isn't receiving special privileges? Either way, the situation becomes politically sensitive. Because the monarchy in Spain is not just a symbol. It exists within a democratic society where public opinion matters enormously. And public opinion can change quickly. For supporters of the monarchy, Leonor's training is a sign of strength. They see a future queen who is disciplined, prepared, and connected to the nation's institutions. But for critics of the monarchy, the situation raises uncomfortable questions. Should a hereditary ruler hold a military position at all? Is this training meaningful preparation for leadership? Or is it simply a ceremonial tradition that no longer fits modern democratic values? These debates might have remained small if Leonor were an ordinary royal. But she isn't. She represents the future of the entire Spanish monarchy. And that future has already faced challenges in recent years. The reputation of the royal family suffered major damage during the scandals surrounding Juan Carlos I. Once widely respected for guiding Spain through its transition to democracy, the former king later became associated with financial controversies and legal investigations. The damage to public trust was significant. In response, King Felipe VI worked hard to rebuild the credibility of the crown. He introduced stricter transparency rules and distanced the monarchy from past scandals. But restoring trust takes time. And Leonor's generation represents a new chapter. For many Spaniards, she symbolizes the possibility of a cleaner, more modern monarchy. That's why every aspect of her life receives such intense attention. Her education, her speeches, her friendships, and now, her military training. But the pressure surrounding this training is growing. Because Leonor is navigating two very different identities at the same time. On one hand, she is a young woman barely in her 20s, learning, growing, and discovering her place in the world. On the other hand, she carries centuries of royal tradition on her shoulders. Every mistake she makes becomes a national story. Every challenge she faces becomes political. And military life leaves very little room for privacy. Cadets train together. They live together. They observe each other constantly. Which means Leonor's experience cannot be fully controlled by palace advisors. Real life happens inside those barracks. And that reality sometimes clashes with the carefully polished image the monarchy tries to maintain. Another complication comes from modern media. In the past, royal training would have remained mostly hidden from public view. Today, even small moments can become viral discussions online. A photograph, a rumor, a brief video clip. Suddenly, millions of people are debating whether the future queen is being treated fairly or unfairly. Social media amplifies every speculation. And speculation is dangerous for institutions that depend on stability and dignity. The Spanish monarchy has always relied on a delicate balance. It must appear both extraordinary and relatable at the same time. Too distant, and it feels outdated. Too ordinary, and it risks losing its mystique. Leonor's military training sits right at the center of that balancing act. When people see her marching in uniform, they feel pride. But they also ask questions. Is this genuine leadership preparation? Or a carefully staged performance? And the answer may not be simple. Because even within the palace, there may be differing opinions about how this training should unfold. Some advisors likely believe the princess must complete the full experience to prove her dedication. Others may worry about the risks. Military environments are unpredictable. They involve physical challenges, strict discipline, and sometimes harsh conditions. If Leonor were injured during training, the political and emotional impact could be enormous. And then there is the question of symbolism. Historically, monarchs leading armies made sense in a world of kings and wars. But today's Europe operates under very different principles. Most modern monarchies are ceremonial. They represent unity rather than command. So some observers wonder whether military training still holds the same meaning it once did. For Leonor personally, the experience is likely transformative. Military life demands resilience. It pushes individuals beyond their comfort zones. It teaches teamwork, responsibility, and discipline. Those are valuable qualities for any leader. Yet the pressure on her is far greater than that of her fellow cadets. Because she is not only training to be an officer. She is training to be a queen. And queens do not have the luxury of ordinary mistakes. The Spanish monarchy hopes that Leonor's military journey will strengthen the crown. They hope it will demonstrate responsibility, maturity, and national commitment. But if public perception shifts, the same training could become a source of controversy. That's why some royal observers are already calling it a potential crisis in slow motion. Not because of anything Leonor herself has done wrong, but because the expectations placed upon her are almost impossible to satisfy. If she excels, critics may claim she received special treatment. If she struggles, critics may question her readiness to rule. Either way, scrutiny never disappears. And that is the true challenge of modern monarchy. It survives not through power, but through public trust. For now, Leonor continues her training step by step. Wearing the uniform, following orders, living the demanding routine of military life. But behind those disciplined images lies a far more complicated story. A story about tradition confronting modern reality. About a young woman carrying the hopes of an ancient institution. And about a monarchy trying to prove it still belongs in the 21st century. Whether this military training ultimately strengthens the crown or quietly deepens its challenges remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. For Princess Leonor, the mask of royal symbolism has begun to slip. And what lies beneath is now being watched more closely than ever before. The question facing Spain today is simple, yet profound. Is this the making of a stronger queen? Or the beginning of a royal crisis that no one inside the palace expected? Only time will reveal the answer. What many people don't realize is that the real pressure surrounding Princess Leonor did not begin the moment she stepped into military training. It began long before that. From the day she was born, Leonor's life was already mapped out by history. As the eldest daughter of King Felipe VI, she automatically became the heir to the throne of Spain. That meant every stage of her life would eventually be interpreted as preparation for the crown. Her education, her public speeches, her character, her discipline, everything, Which is exactly why the decision to send her through full military training was seen as such a defining moment. But inside royal circles, some experts quietly warned that this path could create a very delicate situation. Because military institutions are built on equality among soldiers, royal institutions are built on hierarchy. And when those two systems collide, complications are almost inevitable. At the General Military Academy, where Leonor began her training, the environment is designed to strip away privilege. Cadets wake before sunrise. They endure intense physical training. They follow strict schedules. They obey orders without hesitation. For most young cadets, the goal is simple: prove they belong. But for Leonor, the challenge is different. No matter how hard she works, some people will always believe her path is easier. Not because of her actions, but because of her title. And that perception alone can shape how others treat her. Some fellow cadets might feel intimidated. Others might become overly respectful. A few may even try to keep their distance to avoid unnecessary attention. These subtle shifts can make it difficult for Leonor to fully experience the camaraderie that normally forms among military trainees. And then there's the public dimension. Every image of the princess in uniform carries symbolic weight. To supporters of the monarchy, it represents commitment and duty. To critics, it can look like something very different, a reminder that the head of state is chosen by birth rather than election. This debate has existed in Spain for decades. The monarchy was restored after the dictatorship of Francisco Franco, when Juan Carlos I played a key role in guiding the country toward democracy. For many years, that historical role protected the monarchy from serious criticism. But times have changed. New generations of Spaniards did not experience that transition. To them, the monarchy is simply another institution that must justify its relevance in a modern democratic society. And that's where Leonor's situation becomes especially important. She represents the monarchy's future. Her image will shape how people feel about the crown for the next 50 years. That's an enormous responsibility for someone still learning how to navigate adulthood. Military training adds another layer of complexity. Because the armed forces carry powerful symbolism in any nation. When the future queen appears in uniform, it reinforces the idea that the monarchy stands above politics, connected directly to the state and its institutions. But symbolism can also create misunderstandings. Some observers worry that combining monarchy and military imagery may send the wrong message in a modern European democracy. Others argue the opposite, that it strengthens national unity. Inside the royal household, advisors must carefully weigh these interpretations. Every photograph released to the public is part of a larger communication strategy. Every public appearance is designed to send a message. And yet, no strategy can fully control how people respond. That unpredictability is one reason Leonor's training has become so closely watched. Another challenge comes from the personal sacrifices involved in military life. Cadets often spend long periods away from family. They follow strict rules about communication and privacy. Their schedules leave little time for anything beyond training. For Leonor, that means stepping away from the comfortable world of royal residences and official ceremonies. It means living within an environment where discipline replaces protocol. And while that experience may strengthen her leadership skills, it also exposes her to risks the palace cannot easily manage. Even minor incidents could quickly become national headlines. Imagine a simple training accident. For most cadets, it would be a routine event. For Leonor, it could trigger weeks of debate about whether the future queen should be placed in such situations at all. This constant scrutiny is part of what some royal observers now describe as the hidden cost of the training program. The monarchy hoped the experience would strengthen Leonor's image. Instead, it has opened new conversations about the institution itself. Some commentators have even begun asking a larger question. What kind of monarch does Spain really need in the 21st century? A traditional figure shaped by centuries of royal protocol? Or a modern leader whose authority comes from public respect rather than inherited tradition? Leonor's journey may ultimately answer that question. But the process will not be easy. Because every step she takes now happens under the watchful eyes of the public, the media, and political observers. Even small details attract attention. How she interacts with fellow cadets. How she performs during exercises. How comfortable she appears in the military environment. Each moment becomes a piece of a larger narrative about the future queen. And narratives are powerful. They shape how people interpret events long before those events fully unfold. For example, when the palace releases photos of Leonor marching with other cadets, supporters see a disciplined leader in the making. Critics might see a carefully managed public relations image. Both interpretations exist simultaneously, and both influence public perception. That's why the phrase, royal crisis, is starting to appear in discussions about her training. Not because something dramatic has happened, but because the situation reveals deeper tensions within the monarchy itself. Tensions between tradition and modern expectations. Between symbolism and reality. Between the image of a crown and the life of a young woman destined to wear it. Leonor did not choose those tensions. They are part of the role she inherited the moment she became heir to the throne. Yet how she navigates them could determine the long-term stability of the Spanish monarchy. For now, the princess continues moving forward. Training, learning, adapting to the demands placed upon her. And perhaps discovering parts of herself that even the palace advisors could not predict. Because behind the uniforms and ceremonies, Leonor is still a human being facing extraordinary expectations. The world sees a future queen. But inside those military barracks, she is also a cadet trying to prove that she deserves her place. And that quiet struggle, between identity and duty, may ultimately define her reign long before it even begins. The story of Leonor's military training is far from over. In fact, it may only be entering its most revealing chapter. Because the deeper question is no longer just about military preparation. It's about whether a centuries-old monarchy can adapt to the realities of a rapidly changing world. And whether the young woman at its center can carry that weight without allowing the crown to define every part of who she is.